Welcome back to the Hawks Film Room podcast. It's been a brief hiatus. I'm graduating within the next couple weeks, so I had to unfortunately lock in on school. So I haven't had the chance to really dive into Hawks games, fully in depth until last night. So just for today, it's just going to be me. And for the most part, that's because we're really going to be diagnosing some of the defensive issues the Hawks have, and then also talking about where they have really displayed a lot of growth, addressing some rotation issues, and then, of course, just talking about the lack of consistency from this team. I mean, we are the only team in the NBA to beat Cleveland at home. Cleveland was 17-1 before they played us. Celtics are 1-1 against the Hawks. They're in 14-2 in their other games, per Kevin Schwarnard. And the other thing is, the Wizards have won just 2 games this season, and they were both against the Hawks. We've also lost to Portland and some other teams that we should have honestly beat, right? So the Hawks are a very confusing team. They're sort of a very toxic X in some ways. Like, they show you that they can be better, and then they go back to doing the same exact things that you got really frustrated at them for. But coming off of last night, really impressive win against Cleveland. And so we're going to talk about, at first, something that I found that I thought has really just sort of embodied this season, right? And so the Hawks have been, unfortunately, completely outclassed from the three-point line all year. And so I feel like it's really hard to say that and not visualize it, right? So I actually decided to create a visualization to really illustrate how badly we're getting crushed from the three-point line, okay? And the thing is, here's the graph, all right? Up here, this is the Hawks, top right corner, okay? League average three-point percentage on open looks. So these are shots where a defender is 4+ or more feet away. Opponents are shooting around 41% against the Hawks on these looks. They're also giving up the highest frequency, or the second highest frequency, behind Utah at 37.1 per game. And so you can see just how massive this difference is compared to other teams. And even the teams that are giving up a similar amount of threes, like Memphis or Utah, their opponents aren't converting at nearly as high of a rate. And so I think when people see how well teams shoot against us, the immediate reaction, oh, shooting luck, variance, like we're just getting unlucky, right? And I'm going to push back on that slightly, although there definitely is stuff that has to deal with shooting variance, right? So let me pull up some other stuff to sort of illustrate again, like, why some of this is variance. The other thing is, right? Let's go ahead and pull this up. Okay. That's 1 second. So the Hawks essentially, right, shot quality in terms of the looks that they're allowing teams to shoot from is getting dramatically overperformed by their teams, right? So they're leading the league in the difference between their effective field goal percentage and their actual conversion, right? And so what that looks like is this right here. So on this side of the screen, right, on the left in the negative, this means that teams are shooting below what their shot profile would expect, right? So Oklahoma City is holding teams around 6 points to 5 points below their expected efficiency based on where they're shooting from. And you'll notice that there's a trend among these, right? The worst in the NBA at where teams are outperforming their shot expectation by plus 2.4 effective field goal percentage is Atlanta. So this is an indicator that, again, there is a little bit of shot variance going on here where the Hawks are getting unlucky in a sense, right? But if you go back, and then if you look at the offensive variance too, right? The Hawks are also underperforming in terms of their shot profile. So when you have teams shooting better than expected and the Hawks aren't shooting as good as expected, then it creates that massive discrepancy, right? Which is why I can understand to an extent why some people are saying that a lot of this has to do with shot variance. The other big thing, right? The Hawks are second in wide open three-point attempts allowed, right? Let's get this out the way. So you can see here, these are all the wide open three-point attempts allowed. I mentioned before that they're the most in open and wide open. But if you sort again by most three-point attempts allowed here, the Hawks opponents are shooting 41.4%. Among the 10-ish teams that are giving up at least 10 wide open three-pointers per game, they have the second highest conversion rate. And you can see that the average among these teams is dramatically lower than that 41.4%. They're also second. They are also fourth in open threes. They're second in open threes, right? And you can see the top 5 right here. They're all around 32%, 33%. The Hawks opponents are shooting 39%. So there is somewhat of a case that the Hawks are getting unlucky, right? But my argument is that this is a systemic issue. Okay. If we go back and we look one more time at those graphs that I just showed you, all right, and let's look at this one in particular. What trend do you notice right here at the top of the graph? The top 5: Oklahoma, Houston, Golden State, Memphis, Dallas, San Antonio. These are all good defenses, right? So yes, there's an element of luck, especially with 3-point shooting, but there's a correlation between how well these defenses are performing and how they're able to impose their will defensively on teams. And the Hawks are actually performing better on the defensive end than they ever really have, but they're still not consistently imposing their will. And so, in my opinion, this is a systemic issue, right? So we're going to look at the tape. We're going to look at the numbers. And honestly, this starts with the Hawks' points in the paint differential, which the Hawks have been one of the best teams in the league at getting to the rim and outscoring teams from there, right? The Hawks score the 3rd most points in the paint per game, and they allow the 7th least. So they're outscoring teams in the paint by the 2nd biggest margin on a nightly basis, around 10.2 points per game. And that's a really good number, okay? And that's also sort of makes up a little bit for the gap that they're giving up from the 3-point line. Now, the issue with that is that their issues with the 3-point line and their really good paint defense are correlated. And so then the question is, okay, what's actually worth, fixing? Like, what's worth, are we really going to allow teams to shoot so well from the 3-point line because we're selling out to protect the rim? And I think this is another good way to visualize it, if it would pull up. But okay. So here's the graph, right? Memphis is leading the league in paint differential. Atlanta's right behind them at, again, 10.2 points per game. But they're getting outscored by around 13 points per game from the 3-point line every single night. And they're pretty much even everywhere else. Like, they're not getting killed in fast break. They're not getting killed from anywhere else on the floor. And the argument also is that, like, scoring from the paint is a little bit more consistent. But you have to be so much better in the paint than the marginal benefit of being a little bit better from the 3-point line and a little bit better in the paint it's hard to make up that gap because other teams are pretty good at getting to the rim against the Hawks too, which we'll talk about a little bit in the film. But when they're getting absolutely blasted from the 3-point line, then it really lowers that margin for error. And I think that's, again, like one of the biggest issues with this team. And so I think the defensive ranking is actually problematic, right? And so the Hawks being such a strong paint defense would suggest that we're defending the paint well. But when you look at the numbers, okay, we're contesting just 35 to 36% of opponent shots taken at the rim. And so that's the 4th worst in the league, 26th. They're below league average in rim defensive field goal percentage versus expected, which means that teams are shooting better or slightly worse at the rim than expected, but not enough to be like above in the top half of the league. And we're 11th in opponent paint field goal percentage. They are one of 4 teams, okay, to rank in the top 10 for points in the paint scored and allowed per game. Houston, Cleveland, New York are the other 3. When you compare them to Houston and Cleveland, we're talking about elite defenses that Houston ranks 2nd in rim points saved per 75, 21st in percentage, 3rd in percentage of rim shots contested, and 1st in rim defensive field goal percentage versus expected. So they're actually an elite rim protection team, right? Cleveland with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, again, an elite rim protection team. They're 5th in rim points saved per 75, 21st in percentage of rim shots contested, 7th in rim defensive field goal percentage was expected. And so they're impacting shots at the rim because their bigs are a little bit more capable as rim protectors. They have better positioning, and they also have more and slightly better shot blockers. Like, Houston has a lot of different presences at the rim. So Alperen Sengun has been really good defending the rim because of where they're placing him on the floor. You got Jabari Smith Jr. coming from the weak side. Amin Thompson and Tari Eason. They're creating a lot of havoc. So the defensive infrastructure is a little bit stronger, even if the benefit that they're getting from protecting the rim is a little bit different. The Hawks are a lot more it's more schematic in terms of like actually imposing pressure at the rim. And New York is a little bit more similar to Atlanta. Again, they're one of the 4 teams in the top 10 in both points scored and points allowed in the paint. They are 15th in rim points saved per 75, 24th in rim contest percentage, and about league average and rim defensive field goal percentage was expected. But even that team is a little bit better suited to protect the rim because of OG Anunoby. Obviously, there's some limitations with Cat, and we'll see what they look like with Mitchell Robinson. But they sort of just keep guys at home a little bit more, and they trust their guys in space, which, again, we'll talk about a lot with the Hawks. So with all that being said, let's hop into the film because there were a lot of really good things that I saw from the Hawks against Cleveland, right? But the thing about it is, even in a game where they outscored a team from the three-point line for the third time, just the third time this season, there was still a lot of room for improvement. And that's the great thing about, actually picking up a W, because yes, you can't focus on everything that went right, but there's still a lot of room to get even better. And this was against arguably the best team in the NBA, at least playing the way they are right now. I still think Boston's better. So let's go ahead and hop into it. There's a part of me that, like, I want to start with the good help, but we're going to start with the bad, because I think that will really help us understand what I mean by like overreactions, right? So when I watch, is there a way to close this? Okay, cool. So when I watch the Hawks defend in space, it can be really frustrating. And okay, here we go. Darius Garland is a very capable driver, super shifty, right? And so I understand, and this is also just in general, like a general principle among NBA teams. The low man is going to come over and show help. You're going to zone up on the weak side. And that's all good and well. I don't have a problem with that. And the Hawks actually do a decent job of sort of getting out of here and recovering and Xing out. My thing is, with Darius Garland, yes, he has a step on Trae. He probably could beat Onyeka to the cup as well. I'm okay with Bowie sliding over to help. What I want to see from Onyeka is not taking this roundabout path to get back to Jordan Niang. He sort of runs towards Sam Merrill, even though he should be able to trust that Jalen Johnson is going to rotate here. And that just takes about 2 seconds to maybe a second and a half off of his closeout time. And so while he doesn't really get a good contest on this, because he's already trying to go and overcompensate and get back to Sam Merrill. So again, I don't have an issue with the low man coming over to help. I think anytime you can funnel pretty much like 100% convertible looks at the rim to the three-point line, it's generally good process, right? But we just need to see a little bit more awareness from Onyeka here to be able to X out and trust that everyone else is going to be out. To be able to match up accordingly. And then another thing is just, before we get to that one, here's another good example of overhelping, right? Again, Darius Garland, super shifty. He's not, I wouldn't call him like a great rim finisher. And I think the Hawks in general are having a little bit of trust issues, right? So as he comes off this, it comes into this sort of pitch, right? And he gets downhill. I think at this point, I'm comfortable with leaving him there with Onyeka and Dyson Daniels. I don't think Jalen Johnson needs to cheat over as much as he does. Also, this is just a crazy pass. Like this is a ridiculous pass from Darius Garland. I don't think we need 3 guys there. I'm comfortable with Dyson Daniels as a trailer. I'm comfortable with Onyeka pressuring him from the other side. And this does result in a make, right? And Evan Mobley hasn't shot the ball incredibly well from the corner. But this is too much space. And we'll talk a little bit more about Jalen in particular, and his tendencies as a defender. But here's another good example of what the overhelping can look like. So this starts with Kobe getting stuck on this screen from Evan Mobley. Donovan Mitchell's getting down now. This is a nasty move. Nasty move. He shakes Okongwu, right? I would rather see Jalen with DeAndre Hunter already so low. I would like for him to split this distance a little bit more instead of getting over there to Donovan Mitchell, because he's not actually doing anything. Like, he's kind of just in no man's land. Like, it's different if he's digging. It's different if he's trying to contest a shot. He's sort of just there, right? And because he's just there, it makes this three-pointer, again, this is like Cleveland was throwing great passes. Goes right over his head, and it makes that three-pointer wide open. So you need to provide resistance if you're going to help. Or I would prefer if you just split the distance. Because, again, DeAndre Hunter and Onyeka Okongwu are kind of in positions to make a play on the ball. Again, here's another overreaction, at least in my opinion. And I never really have many criticisms for Dyson Daniels. But I thought on this particular rep, he was a little bit too keened in on Darius Garland. The Hawks were pretty aggressive with nail help in general. So nail help is just when you have a shooter on the wing, or you'll typically be at the nail to be in the driving lanes. Now the issue is Ty Jerome has shot the ball ridiculously well from three-point range, particularly from the above the break, but even from the corners as well. And so this is another example of, like, if you're going to provide help, kind of just half-heartedly, again, still, I think he might have even got a hand on the ball. Still is able to get his hand on the ball, but he's not stepping in and enforcing this pass. It's more so Bogey and Onyeka, and I don't really think we need to be showing three guys on this drive. It's decently contained right here. And again, if Dyson is going to do this, I just prefer to see a little bit more aggression. Again, another Jalen Johnson clip. Again, dude, and I've said this before on Twitter, but I feel like what's really remarkable about Jalen Johnson is that he's already a positive defender, and he still has so much growth. And here's what I mean by growth, right? So the situational awareness. The Hawks are Cleveland goes to a post-up. Evan Mobley's grown a lot as an offensive player. I want you to watch how comfortable Onyeka is in this post-up against him, right? Let's just watch. First dribble, he's going nowhere. Second dribble, going nowhere. That's a brick wall. Picks up the dribble. He doesn't have a shot. What is Jalen Johnson doing? There's no need to sink in this much and, again, not do anything. You're just standing there. Hands aren't active. You're not ready to get in the passing lanes. And then as soon as he does go for the pass, again, if his hands are already up here, I think he has a better chance of getting this deflection. Still almost gets it. And then the closing speed is ridiculous to get out there, and that's a decent closeout, but there was no need to show help here. I'm comfortable leaving Onyeka one-on-one, especially once as his teammate. If I see him take that first dribble and he's going nowhere, you're good. I'm not showing you any help here. But the Hawks, I think, at least in my opinion, have gotten this mentality of showing help because they've had to overcompensate for poor defense for so long. And that's on the bigs. It's on the guys like Jalen Johnson, but even guys like DeAndre Hunter. I don't like the positioning here either. We'll talk about positioning a little bit as well. But the Hawks don't end up getting hurt by this, but these are the types of things that you just need to mitigate open three-pointers. And there's just no need to be this low on Evan Mobley if you're not going to be actively doing anything. Another example on trust. The Hawks need to trust their guys in space. Okay, here's Kobe Buffkin in space against Donovan Mitchell. He's sticking him, but you can see how much that Bogey cheats over, right? Screen from Sam Merrill. Sam Merrill is one of the best above the break three-point shooters in the NBA. I think he's shooting above 52% from there. With that in mind, this is really, really aggressive help from Bogdan Bogdanović, particularly look where Jalen Johnson is positioned. This side of the floor is going to be pretty tough. Again, Donovan Mitchell, very dynamic scorer. This is going to be pretty tough for him to get through. But Bogey is essentially right behind Kobe. And even with the space that Donovan creates, Kobe's still in good position. Again, we're able to recover decently well. The Hawks are 5th or 6th in contested three-point shots, but they're making it tougher for themselves, and they're giving teams better looks because they're overhelping so early. Let's see if we have another one. Another one here. Okay. multiple times I've just begged the Hawks, like, trust Dyson Daniels, trust him in space. Here's another good example. There's Garland with the ball screen set. Okay. Dyson gets through, forces another rescreen. Here, I don't know why Onyeka is still this attached to Darius Garland. There's no reason, especially as soon as he picks the ball up. Dyson has this under control. Onyeka is giving Jared Allen way too much space. As soon as this ball gets picked up, I want to see him get back to Jared Allen because that's his only realistic outlet, or it's coming back up to the top. Instead, he waits until the pass is thrown. And so by the time he gets to Jared Allen and he loads up for this hook shot, there's nothing Onyeka can do. He can't body him up. He can't put any sort of physicality on him, and it's 2 points. So again, just trust the great perimeter defenders that the Hawks now have, right? Even in these situations, I'm not really, as soon as he picks the ball up, you need to get back. It's really all it is. Let's see. Another example of overhelping. And again, a lot of this is like good intentions. Like I know where the intentions are coming from, but it just puts the Hawks in these tough situations. So we're gonna watch Reza Shea here overhelp, which leaves his man wide open. Caught by Donovan Mitchell, nasty pump fake, kicks it back out, and that's Darius Garland wide open for 3. And he misses it, right? But let's see where Reza Shea came from. Reza Shea is matched up against Darius Garland here. The Hawks have 3 people in the paint. I understand one is Trae Young, but the other 2 are Clint Capella and Jalen Johnson. Reza Shea, if the goal is to force kickouts, right? It makes sense, but not for certain shooters. And that's the thing that the Hawks have consistently had issues with, even before Quinn Snyder. And the interesting thing is, and I'll show this graph a little bit later, once I get done looking through this film, they've done a decent job not allowing really good three-point shooters from taking shots, but it's plays like these that have become a little bit too frequent because now this is a wide open 3 for one of the best catch and shoot players in the NBA. And the Hawks are doing a good job of Xing out. That's why they're pretty high in contested three-point shots. Trae busts his ass to get out here. But at this point, for an NBA shooter, that's not much of a contest, right? And it's still Trae Young. Let's see. What else do we have? One more thing. Here's an example of Trae sort of not being locked in. Ty Jerome is one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA currently, right? When he's around the arc, you have to pay attention. And he sort of just mindlessly jumps to the corner, even though that's been vacated. I would have liked to see a little bit of communication from Bogey here. Cut. Could have been DeAndre Hunter. I don't really see anyone speaking. But it's Trae's thought that someone's in the corner that he jumps down there, and then by then he's just too much out of position. So, again, not great effort from Trae on this particular rep, but I think this is a communication thing as much as effort. I think we have one more example. Yeah. So, again, I don't have a lot of criticisms for Dyson Daniels. I think he's one of the best defenders in the NBA for a reason. Like, who am I to critique him? But I do think there's some times where I feel like he needs to split 2 a little bit more here. So in this particular example, which results in an air ball, he's sort of, at this point, the Hawks this is the weak side, right? And so they're asking Dyson to split 2 sort of unconsciously because of the way that this handoff goes. And now that Onyeka is showing early help as the low man, DeAndre Hunter picks up his man. And so now that leaves 2 players on the weak side for Dyson to split. And again, great effort from DeAndre Hunter to get out there. Here's an example of just sort of not really like helping, but not really. I think you should never be doing nothing, in my opinion, right? Like there should be a lot of intention on defense. Here, there's not a ton of attention from DeAndre. He understands, okay, we've got a pick and roll going on the left side of the floor, right? Which means that everyone's going to have to rotate over because of Dyson getting a little bit hung up. And he does that, but again, hands are in the passing lanes. He's not committing to either one. And so it's an open three. Now let's talk about what they did well. Okay. I know I had a lot of negative examples, but there are a lot of things I really like from the Hawks in terms of who they allowed to shoot open threes and how they were able to react to certain situations. One thing that I really love to see from them was the sort of prioritization of certain guys being able to shoot, right? So Isaac Okoro, he actually isn't shooting it horribly this year, but historically he hasn't been a strong three-point shooter. I think he was 1 for 8 or 1 for 9 from the three-point line this game. And a lot of that was because of whoever was defending him was like they were pretty happy with conceding those shots. So that could look like Bogey being deep, sort of cutting off these driving lanes. It could also look like and we saw multiple examples of this where he's helping off the nail, which sort of truncates the driving lanes for Cleveland's guards. So you're going to see it again from here from Bogey, where he's already in position if they do decide to drive the ball. And I'm okay with Isaac Okoro beating you from a three-point line. What I'm not okay with is Darius Garland or Sam Merrill or Ty Jerome or Donovan Mitchell unless it's pull-up threes. Like you can't concede catch and shoot threes to great shooters. And so here's something I really like to see as well. They did a great job tagging the roller with Isaac Okoro's defender, right? So here, or pretty much whoever was the low man, right? They're running a empty side spread pick and roll, which basically means there's only 2 players on one side of the court and everyone else is on the other side, right? And so the goal for Cleveland here, of course, is to figure out a way to generate open shots. The Hawks want to make sure that open shot isn't for one of their stronger offensive players on the floor, Jared Allen, who's really good in the short roll as a floater guy, as a kick out guy, or for Darius Garland. So what the Hawks are going to do is actually preemptively rotate. So here, Zachary Richardson is a low man. Bogey tells him to step up and meet Jared Allen on the catch. And with Bogey sinking in to pick up Richardson, man, that leaves Isaac Okoro, the worst offensive player on the floor, an open shot, and he misses. And this is something that they did multiple times, right? Here's another example with the Jared Allen, Darius Garland sort of action. Yeah. So here's the example. They've got Bogey already in position to tag the roller. Jeez. So here's Bogey, supposed to be guarding Isaac Okoro. He's already on the other side of the floor. Like that's how much disrespect they showed him as an offensive player. As Jared Allen comes, he cuts the ball. Bogey's hands are high, preventing a sort of dump off to the cut. It goes out of Isaac Okoro. Again, Trae comes over to close out. He drives. And then this is just really good interior passing from Cleveland. But it's the ability to take away from their number one option on the play. That's really important because now, instead of this being, a push shot for Jared Allen off of this pick and roll, then it's a contested hook shot over Clint Capella that he does end up making. Now, with the Hawks being so aggressive defending pick and rolls like that, right, this is when you really start to add layers to your defensive coverage, and this is where you start to see the benefit of having multiple intelligent defenders. So, again, the Hawks have been tagging the roll preemptively all night, right, especially in the middle of the floor. What Jalen Johnson does here is as they come off this double drag screen with Ty Jerome and Jared Allen dives, he acts like he's going to run over and tag him. Donovan Mitchell sees that. That's what the Hawks have been doing all game. And he actually jumps the passing lane, making a crazy save. And this turns into a lob on the other end, all because the Hawks were leveraging the way that Cleveland was expecting them to play defense. And so this is when you really get into baiting some of the best playmakers in the NBA because they're expecting you to play this particular way because that's how you played the last couple of possessions defensively. So I thought that was really cool to see. Let's see what else we have. Here's another example of helping off Isaac Okoro. Like, again, you want to muck up the driving lanes for Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland as much as possible. The help is coming early and often off of Isaac. He's trying to clear out here to give space for Jalen Tyson. Zachary Richardson, super smart, positional team defender. He comes over early, provides help. Open three for Isaac Okoro. but he can't knock it down. And then the Hawks are going the other way. I thought the Hawks were pretty crisp with the way they were recovering after being put in rotation. This isn't something that the Hawks typically do. Like, we typically have a lot of issues with that. And this is a good X out. It's just a nasty make by Niang, I'm going to be honest. But again, we see the Hawks preemptively tagging the roller. They don't want Jared Allen facilitating from the middle of the floor, and they definitely don't want him catching and rolling to the basket. So here, Dyson actually reads where this ball is going before it's passed. Darius Garland is rotating along the key, but you can see Dyson Daniels is already headed towards the corner before this ball is released. And this is somewhat of a no-look pass, so he still anticipates this. And he closes out high, and this is just a nice make by Georges Niang, but again, great defensive process from the Hawks. Here's another good example of good defensive recognition. So Trae actually recognizes that he's the low man here, so he's supposed to be tagging Jared Allen, and he steps up, right? I'm not saying he provided a ton of resistance, but he's able to diagnose where he's supposed to be defensively. I would have preferred for them to scram switch here, so have Dyson be the low man and then have Trae split too, but either way is fine. They just end up not being able to secure the rebound right after the first rebound, and then they get the second one. I think this is good help as well. Just showing, because Donovan Mitchell, he actually had a nasty spin through a double team. This is good nail help. And it's a kick out to Georges Niang. Bogey is splitting these two, right? Because Jalen showed help. At this point, you prefer Niang shoots over Sam Merrill. So it's a nice little stunt to force him to not be able to pass it to Merrill, essentially. I feel like Dyson Daniels covers gaps in the Hawks defense better than maybe any perimeter defender in the NBA. He just picks up these breakdowns and covers them all by himself. So we're going to see an example of this here when the ball gets put in the rotation from the Hawks, against the Hawks, right? So as Donovan Mitchell gets downhill, Dyson sinks a little bit. At this point, because Donovan's getting downhill, Onyeka steps up to help. DeAndre Hunter cuts off Jared Allen from the middle of the paint, and Dyson just busts ass. He gets out there. Honestly, like he could have blocked, maybe could have blocked this if he got here just a little bit sooner. But he gets out here, gets a great contest on this Darius Garland 3, and it's a miss. Let's see what else we have. Yes, so there's one more Dyson Daniels clip that I was really impressed by. His recovery and his ground coverage is ridiculous. Like it doesn't make sense. Even when he does help, like he can get out and really impact the shot like ridiculously effectively. So here he's being aggressive on this dig because he wants to see if he can get the ball away from Isaac. Nearly steals it. And then look how quickly he gets out to, he's jumping from the free throw line to the 3-point line. And look how quickly he's able to get a great contest on that shot. And it's a miss. So all in all, right, the Hawks still gave up about 53 pointers. A lot of the shot quality, I would say, was like pretty heavily in, like Cleveland was getting good shots. They ended up finishing with 48 3-point attempts, so 6 more than the Hawks. Shot 15 of 48. The Hawks shot 20 of 42. So to touch on the offense a little bit, there's been a level of the Hawks are sort of searching for something, or consistency in the minutes without Trae, but then also Trae without Jalen Johnson. And there was a really good graph that I saw from NBAvisuals.com, who has a really cool site. And he basically showed me that Trae has been essentially a completely different player with Jalen Johnson on the floor versus Jalen Johnson on the floor. And that's a little bit problematic, right? Of course. But when you open up this graph, you can see that the impact is a little bit better. He's averaging more points. His efficiency is dramatically better with Jalen Johnson on the floor, going from a -12 relative true shooting. And this hasn't been updated since the last 2 games, I think, but Relative true shooting is how much better than league average is he scoring the ball uh, from an efficiency perspective. So across the board, the Hawks and Trae Young have been better with Jalen Johnson on the floor. And that definitely checks out with the way that he started the season. The other thing is Onyeka hasn't necessarily been great to start the season in terms of consistency. His rim finishing has been down all year. He's had issues, um, and then he's had in general issues just sort of converting at the rim. And so the Hawks defense and offense hasn't been there's been like dramatic drop offs when they go to the bench. But tonight, the Hawks bench looked like they did last season. So I think they scored like almost 60 to 70 points just off the bench. And that was led by Jalen Johnson in the non-trade minutes, but then also DeAndre Hunter. And also Kobe Buffkin had maybe his best offensive stretch of his career, starting, especially when he closed out the first quarter with 8 points, and the Hawks were able to make up a lot of ground from that first quarter deficit where they were down 19. And a lot of that was attributed to the bench coming in, scoring the ball, and being able to keep it close, right? So let's go ahead and look at some offensive footage from the last game versus Cleveland. Let's go ahead. I want to start with Kobe because the thing about Kobe is he's gotten a lot of, and I know people like expect a lot from a somewhat of a higher draft pick, and that's definitely fair. But I think in general, did I even? I don't even think I clipped it. Oh, I don't even think I clipped. Oh, here we go. So the Hawks have been searching for stability, like I said. And with Trae off the floor, they have to commit to a little bit more ball movement. And that's what I love to see from this second unit. This possession was absolutely beautiful. And it starts with trusting Jalen as the lead playmaker on this unit, right? And one thing I've seen the Hawks hunt for in general is getting these sort of handoff scenarios and then having the forward or big slip it, throwing it over the top once they force a switch, and then taking advantage of the defense being in rotation. Here, if DeAndre Hunter starts his cut a little bit earlier, like before the catch, he might have been open. But the Hawks keep it moving after he doesn't come open. We go straight into a dribble handoff. Kobe Buffkin, very, very confident, rising up for three here. Knocks it down over Donovan Mitchell. And that was a beautiful shot and a beautiful possession. I thought in general, like I said, the bench looked like the bench, but I thought guys like DeAndre Hunter and Bogdan Bogdanovic looked like themselves as well. These are the type of shots I've come to expect from Bogey. Like even in his I think he's 33. He was the best contested shot maker in the NBA last season. I think maybe even the last two seasons. And so these sort of step backs have just kind of become his bread and butter. And so it was really good to see him sort of come back to his form. I thought the Hawks also mixed in some pretty nice sets. But again, with the bench on the floor, they have to get out and score in transition. They have to play with a lot of pace in general, but in the half court, they have to play with a lot of passing. And this is what it looks like when the Hawks get out and run. You get a lot of benefits from Jalen Johnson's ability to grab and go, but then also Onyeka's mobility because he ran the floor right, and he forced this cross match because Evan Mobley was not in the picture as he was the last guy back up the floor for Cleveland, and then he's able to put Donovan Mitchell in the rim and create easy 2 points without any help coming from the shot blocker. And that's the way they're going to have to continue to play with Trae off the floor. And then even with Trae on the floor without Jalen, I'd like to see them continue that same style of play. Let's see what other stuff we have. Yes. So I thought this was a really nice set to create an open three. I love seeing these sort of corner actions where you'll have I forget exactly what it's called. They're not exactly pin downs, but you'll have the guard screen for another guard to create an open three. We actually saw something very similar from Cleveland, that play what I was talking about with where Onyeka kind of got sauced by Donovan Mitchell. It's instead Trae coming here. He's going to reject the screen. He's going to actually go off the screen. And then when Ty Jerome comes over to show help early, the in and out dribble just completely loses him. And then it leaves the Cavs out of position because they were sort of playing just a very aggressive man concept. And now DeAndre Hunter was wide open because of the screen that Bogdan Bogdanovic set. Let's see what else. Cleveland also was pretty aggressive with Trae all night. I think they got away with a couple fouls. When they did blitz him, it's a huge asset to have a guard who can read the floor like Dyson Daniels can. And so here he reads that sink in from Evan Mobley, throws the pass on time and on target to Frieza Shea, and that's 3 points. I thought the touch from Reza Shade to start the third quarter. Also, I didn't even mention this. The man scored 13 straight points, okay? And that flurry really set the tone for the rest of the game. And without that stretch, the Hawks probably don't get out of Cleveland with a win. He hit that first three. But then he also, I really love what I've seen from him attacking the basket out of these closeout scenarios. He has really good touch, especially on these scoop shots. And this is just really fluid. I love how he gathers it here before he gets to the free throw line. So he's already elevated before Jared Allen can get there. This is also the same guy who said, like, he doesn't feel nearly as athletic in the NBA. I think this is a pretty athletic play, very fluid. He releases this ball, way before Jared Allen can get to it, and it barely touches the rim. And these are the types of flashes that I've always felt that Reza Shea had a very safe floor, right? If there's anything I thought he could do, he would come here and shoot. And he hasn't found his shot consistently yet. Last 5 games, he has, though, around 47% from the field. I think 38% from 3. But it's his ability to flash things like this that make me really excited about what he could be in the long run. Here's another really tough shot from. Oh wait, so let's see if we can find one more Reza Shea clip. Yes. Here's another good Reza Shea clip. Again, attacking closeouts. What I like from him is he diagnoses that there's no shot blocker on the floor, immediately puts the ball on the floor, and he doesn't necessarily have an angle to get to the basket with the way Cleveland's playing defense, but he's able to comfortably rise up and knock the shot in off the glass. Let's see. Again, here's another clip from his 13-point straight, I think was what he had. Attacking Evan Mobley off the dribble. That's not a small feat. Mobley is out of position a little bit with the way that his feet are. You just say, recognize that, attacks him. Ooh. And again, I didn't know. I watched a lot of him, right, when he's overseas. I don't think his handle was this tight. Scoop shot off the very top right corner of the glass. Very top right corner. And he knocks it in. This is an incredibly tough shot. And this is the type of stuff that, could be a game changer for the Hawks in the long run. Let's see. Here's another Reza Shea clip from, again, I gotta give him love for the third quarter. I thought Trae had, of course, he had 22 assists, but he had some ridiculous passes all game. I don't know how he gets this through. I'm gonna be honest with you. Let's try and zoom in. Can I even zoom in? I don't think I can zoom in. This is a ridiculous pass. Okay. Garland comes over to show help early. Trae jumps up in the air, wraps the ball around right over Jared Allen's head. Ball is perfectly placed. Reza Shea just has to, technically not perfectly placed because he did have to lean a little bit to the left, but it's right there at the right sort of depth for his shooting pocket. He rises up, knocks it down over Evan Mobley. Let's look at some Jalen Johnson clips because Jalen had some really nice clips as well. Again, with Trae off the floor, he is in a lot of ways our primary playmaker and initiator. I thought this was a really tough shot over Evan Mobley after Onyeka fumbled it. He's able to keep it away from the shot blocker here as he catches this on the backdoor cut. Directly engages him without seeking out his body, which I thought was pretty interesting. And he brings the ball from the right side of his body to the left. And then that is a ridiculous shot over one of the best shot blockers in the NBA. He knocks it in. Another great Jalen Johnson clip from a processing perspective. The Hawks were hunting mismatches all night. They did some inverted pick and roll, which we'll talk about to close the game. Here, Jalen Johnson has a mismatch against Darius Garland, backs him down, sees the help coming, and whips this pass Again, on target, on time, directly to Dyson Daniels, over the defense, right into his shooting pocket, rises with confidence, knocks it down. That's a great possession. Let's see what else we have from Jalen. Yeah, so I mentioned this. That was the first lob that they threw off the steal. Here you're gonna see Jalen and Trae at their best. Early offense, attacking. Jalen's gonna slip the screen. Jared Allen is not in position, right? He's not the low man on this play. It's Donovan Mitchell because Onyeka isn't all the way down the floor yet. And so this is an easy read from Trae, no look lob. And the angle that Jalen catches this is, dare I say, prime LeBron stuff. Just from the fact that he's able to reach it back and still bring it in and knock it down. Ridiculous stuff from Jalen, who is now one of 4 players to average 20 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists this season. Let's look at this. There were some moments, though, I felt like I want to see the Hawks be a little bit more aggressive, especially from the bigs. Here, Jalen, I think he sort of undersells himself sometimes going to the rim. I think he can gather this right over Donovan Mitchell right there. He has Mobley on his side. I think he can get to the rim here. And he kicks it out to DeAndre Hunter. Not a terrible shot or decision, but just another example where I think he can be a little bit more aggressive. Let's talk about the clutch minutes, because there's been a lot of flack, deservingly so, for Quinn Snyder and his – he hasn't exactly drawn up great plays to end games as of late. Like, I think he has in the past, of course, but for these particular instances, it was the loss against Detroit, where it was just sort of like a Trae ISO and there wasn't really any other actions or any sort of vision outside of that. The loss against Portland was the same way. He just sort of had a Trae ISO, didn't really have anything else outside of that. I thought the Hawks had an interesting approach to the clutch, right? So what we saw, a lot of what they did was this inverted pick and roll. And the goal for that is to force a mismatch between Darius Garland and Evan Mobley, switching onto Jalen Johnson and Trae Young, right? And so even on this play, I think they forced the mismatch and then ran it again. But the thing is, when they were getting these mismatches, they weren't really doing anything with it. Like, here's Jalen Johnson and Trae again. They forced a mismatch, but they're not really attacking it. They're kind of going away from it. So I didn't really understand the point of that. And because they weren't generating good offense from their two, like, they were able to create the mismatch, and then it would be a pass out to DeAndre Hunter or Dyson Daniels. And to their credit, right, they were able to score in these situations, but I don't think it's necessarily like good offensive process. In my opinion, though, anytime you can get Cleveland shot blockers away from the rim, that definitely adds value. So, for example, you have Jalen spaced here, and then DeAndre Hunter is able to get inside position. Trae reads it immediately, and he finishes strong through contact, which honestly I don't think the Hawks got a consistent whistle. Again, another example here where they're able to create the mismatch, but they're not necessarily attacking it. And it comes down to DeAndre Hunter to create. And again, there is some value from having Jalen out here because Evan Mobley isn't by the rim, and he finishes tough through the contact. Show the Dyson clip as well. So I do still think there's room to grow in terms of the clutch offense, and they just have to be more intentional with, like, if they're going to seek out mismatches, then do something with it. Don't just do the mismatch for no reason. If we were talking about a scenario where Trae brings out Evan Mobley to half court, then passes to Jalen, then you get rotation from there. But there's just a lack of aggression from both him and Jalen in the clutch that can't consistently happen because they shouldn't come down to Dyson and it shouldn't come down to DeAndre Hunter. Again, big shots made by both of them. They're a big reason why we won. Also, some of the threes here that Trae hit. But the lack of aggression from Trae has definitely been interesting. I'm not at the point where I'm concerned. He took 18 shots this game, and some of them weren't always advisable. I do wonder if the Achilles thing is hampering him. But the Hawks just have to be a little bit more intentional with their clutch offense, right? I thought this was a big possession, and this pretty much iced it right here. Again, Trae was getting beat up all game. All game. Ty Jerome, I think he got fouled 3 times on this play. Ty Jerome fouls him here. Evan Mobley, possibly a foul here as well. Another foul here. He shakes it all off and delivers a great pass to Onyeka Okongwu to ice the game. So I think that's all that we have from the film. And so my biggest takeaways from, let me put up the graph one more time because the graph is crazy. Let me pull the graph one more time. I think the biggest takeaway that I have, right, from what I watched from Cleveland, from what I watched from the Hawks the last couple of games, they're selling out to protect the paint, which is fine. But it's getting us blitz from the three-point line. And some of this can be attributed to teams outperforming their expected shot quality, 100%. A lot of guys have come in and got their get-right game against the Hawks, but they need to adjust quicker and in real time. If a player is hot, maybe don't rotate as aggressively. Trust your guys who are great perimeter defenders in space, and they'll be a lot better off defensively. I think there's also been a lot of discussion about rotations. I think it's tough because for the Hawks in particular, yes, they do have a lot of capable guys who can play minutes, right? But it's a lot easier said than done to find time for that. And I think there's a couple examples that I want to show real quick. First thing is when you look at the percentage of possessions by number of starters on the floor, the Hawks actually are just 19th, right? So the Hawks are all the way down here. Sorry, 16th. So they don't really play their starters at a crazy frequency like some of the other teams in the NBA. And in general, they have a pretty even distribution on the percentage of starters that they have on the floor. But the thing is, though, and again, this graph isn't necessarily updated, I think, at this point. Not this one, but the one I'm about to show. But they have one of the shortest rotations in the NBA. Let's see. This is a great visualization right here. Golden State has a lot of NBA caliber players. They typically go 11 or 12 deep. The Hawks are more so like right around 9-ish to like 10, maybe, but most likely they typically don't, right? And so I think if anyone has an argument to play, it's Vit Krejci and Larry Nance Jr. But then the question then becomes, okay, where do those minutes come from? Because the challenge also for the Hawks is that their best lineup isn't their starting lineup. And their best lineup is with DeAndre Hunter in place of Zachary Reese-Shea. And so when you take a look at the full rotation, this is when you start to have to figure out, okay, where do these minutes actually come in for these guys? I think that you could make an argument that for these power forward minutes, you could cut out these minutes and replace them with Larry Nance, take Dyson off the floor or DeAndre Hunter off the floor, and then all these minutes that aren't Jalen Johnson minutes. So that would be about 3 minutes here, 7, essentially about 15 minutes a game will be played by a traditional power forward. So you could do that against bigger teams. I think it also becomes tough when you think about where you're going to play Vit Krejci, because Bogey has been, he hasn't been exactly like elite to start the season. In terms, but again, like he's only just now getting back. So you'd have to look at, let's maybe put some of the minutes, take some minutes from Bogey. You don't want to take minutes from Dyson because he's so essential next to Trae. But I think with Trae off the floor, the argument for Vit Krejci, at least in my opinion, is that he moves the ball a lot better. He's a connective passer. He's going to make the offense flow a little bit better than someone like DeAndre Hunter at power forward. And so if you do want to run a Kobe, Bogey, Vit, Dre, Onyeka lineup, I could see that working. And then the other thing is, can they find any space for Trae to play with Kobe as well? We haven't really seen that, but I think the vision when you draft Kobe Buffkin is that he can be a complement next to Trae. It doesn't just have to be Dyson who's always matching Trae's minutes. It could be Kobe matching those minutes as well against certain teams. I think Dyson, of course, is still like an all-NBA caliber defender, and there's still ways to go for Kobe to get there. But I think we need to see both of them play together so we can really understand like where Kobe's going to be in the long-term plans, because at least in my opinion, I still think that he has a lot of utility, not just as the only backup point guard, but as a combo guard next to Trae who can attack off the seams created for him by Trae. Because he hasn't really had the chance to benefit from that. And I think both of them would benefit from what they can bring to one another. And I think 11 minutes a night when he was playing so well to start in the first quarter just isn't enough. But I think when you look at it this way, it's kind of clearer that there's not a lot of wiggle room. Like, is playing Vit Krejci 10 to 12 minutes a night going to change a lot of stuff for the Hawks? I think it could really improve the second unit, but whose minutes are you cutting? DeAndre Hunter's playing really well. You want to continue to build up Bogey. I would imagine there's probably some sort of politics as well where they want to keep the trade value up for Larry Nance, so they don't want him to get hurt or like underperform. They may even be considering like looking at the other veterans like Bogdan Bogdanovic and figuring if they're going to move on from him. So a lot of rotation questions to be asked and answered. I'm curious where you all feel about it. I feel like what I've been really encouraged by from the Hawks in particular, though, is that they're doing a lot better job of playing the most impactful lineup more minutes. So, for example, in this game, Trae, Dyson, Dre, Jalen Johnson, and Onyeka were a plus 10, and they were playing really well. And so they played the most minutes of any game, of any lineup. Same thing against the Bulls. Trae, Dyson, Dre, Jalen Johnson, Clint Capella, their best lineup this season, played the most minutes, and I haven't had a chance to chart the Mavericks yet. But yeah, that's all I have for today. Our next game, again, is against Cleveland. I think they're going to come with looking for vengeance. It's an NBA Cup game here in Atlanta. See if I can find a Cleveland Cavaliers fan to break it down with. But y'all enjoy your Thanksgiving. So thank you for the opportunity to talk about basketball and have, just the small platform that I have on YouTube. So let me know if you enjoyed. I was I feel like I tried to like really deep dive into this game, but I feel like I'm gonna get better at, presenting all the data at once to you guys and breaking down the film. So again, please leave any feedback, any questions that you have for the Hawks, any ways, just any thoughts in general. Like I love talking about this team, even on Thanksgiving. So yeah, y'all enjoy the food, the family, and I'll see you after the Hawks hopefully win the NBA Cup game and keep their sort of in-season tournament dreams alive after tomorrow night. So see y'all tomorrow.